there's that big orange sign and it says detour. Now, if I'm in my hometown, I know what to do, right? If I'm around it's familiar, I know I can go to the stop sign and turn the opposite way to detour and still know where I'm going. But what if you're somewhere you don't know? Right? The one time I was driving out to, speaking of Ohio, driving out to Ohio for seminary, and there's this huge wreck. 70 is shut down, and they're just directing people off. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. And that's why I told you, like, any detour, like, you see the sign, you have to take it, and I'm like anxious, right? You get a little concerned, because I know like, in my own hometown, I know where I'm going, but there have been times when I'm going on the detour, like, the sign fell down. And you don't see it, but I know the turn because I know where I am. But what if you're not where you know and the sign falls down, or maybe you got turned and it points you a different direction, right? It can cause some concerns, anxiety, it can cause some angst in our lives when we don't know where we're going and how we're going to get to where we need to get to. And that's where we find the Israelites. In part of this time as well. So last week we left off after the incredible event of the Passover, right? The Israelites followed the specific instructions from God, where they chose the spotless lamb, then they roasted it and ate it in their homes while their doors on the outside were marked with the blood of the lamb, so that God would pass over their homes and only take the firstborn from the Egyptians. And as the Egyptians wake up and realize the devastation and loss that has happened overnight, Pharaoh finally has had enough, and he goes to Moses and Aaron and says, get out. Take your people and go. And so the Israelites pick up quickly and begin this journey, and Exodus 12:37 tells us that there are 600,000 men, and then plus the women and children. They set out of Egypt. Now that's like, that's a lot of people, right? That's not just a couple people like, hey, follow me. It's a mass movement out of Egypt. And so Moses is up front with the angel of the Lord, because he sent an angel to guide them, and he's like, let's go. And I'm sure that as they're packing up and as they're moving out, there's a moment of relief, recognizing that they now have freedom, right? They had been slaves under Pharaoh for so long. But now what? Exodus 13 tells us that God did not send them the short way. They would detour straight off the bat. Because in verse 17 it says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though it was shorter, for God said if they faced war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. And so God led the people around by the desert road towards the Red Sea. So he doesn't take them the short way, because he knows that in their human nature, if they have to fight to get out, that maybe they won't, and they'll just turn around. And so he takes them the longer route around, and he leads them, as I said, with an angel in the front, with a pillar, a cloud, a pillar of a cloud, by day, and a pillar of fire at night, so they can move both day and night. Can you imagine moving that many people and how slow of a process that could be? But then God says, oh, another detour, you need to go back a little bit. And then camp back here, straight across from this very specific spot. And it was while they were there that the Egyptians realized that the Israelites had completely bugged out. They're not coming back. They didn't just go out to the desert to worship. They left. Oh, this is left the voting, right? The Israelites have left Egypt. They're gone. They're not coming back. And of course, this infuriates Pharaoh, because he's now lost his workforce. Right? They were making bricks, so Pharaoh could build stuff. And now Pharaoh does not have anyone making bricks, so therefore he can't build stuff to make himself look good. And so he's like, we have to do something. So he gets his best chariots and men together, and they go after the Israelites. And it says in verse 10 of the next chapter, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. And they were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us up out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, just leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. But Moses answered the people, he says, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be. Now, I'm going to be honest here. The Israelites should be happy that they had Moses and not me leading them, right? Because I would have been a little perturbed that they so quickly forgot how they got to the desert, all the things that God had done for them to get them there, right? All the plagues that took down Egypt but didn't touch them, and then the death of the firstborns, and none of that touched them. That's how God got them out. Like, are you forgetting what just happened? All that God did to make it happen, and the fact that they would have thought that all that He did to bring them there to the desert to die, that's just ludicrous, right? So we enter in now to one of the most popular stories in the Bible, most likely. God puts that pillar of cloud behind them and an angel, and so that's the story to the Egyptians, and Moses is told to raise his staff over the water of the sea, and the wind blew and pushed the waters back to allow, think about it, 600,000 men, women, and children. So we're looking at 20. So we're looking at a lot of people, 600,000 plus. So they don't need just an aisle, right? God didn't just push back the Red Sea this much and make an aisle for them to walk through. That would have taken days and days and days for 600,000 men plus the women and children to walk through, right? He spread that out, and it had been a 6-lane highway that He put in the middle of the Red Sea. Walls filled up with water and walls on each side for them to walk through. And they didn't have to walk through close to lose their sandals in the muck, right? It says they crossed on dry ground. They were just walking. And how amazing is that? And so they're moving through, and of course the Egyptians are coming because that pillar of cloud and the angel are moving with them, and so the Egyptians are getting closer. And as they're moving out of the Red Sea, the Egyptians are coming in, and as they're coming in, the wheels of their chariots start to lock up, and the people, remember, these are the ones that saw the plagues as well. They knew what God was doing for the Israelites in their own land. And now they're coming after, and their wheels start to jam up. And they're like, we gotta get out of here. Their God is fighting for them. Against us. We're not going to win. And as they're realizing this, but of course Pharaoh isn't going to retreat, God instructs Moses to stretch his hand out over the sea on the other side. And as he does, those walls of water come loose and overtake Pharaoh. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, yet Pharaoh and his army are overtaken by the water. Those Egyptians that they saw, they were down to the end. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of God displayed against the Egyptians, the people said, we get this God thing now. And they said, we're going to fear God and put our trust in Him. And in Moses and servant, whatever He says, we'll do. We get this now. We're going to trust God. And then they paused on the other side and they sang and gave praise to God for all that He had done. So we with this story because, wow, we have a new group of Israelites. They're following God, they're trusting God. This is going to be a great journey in the desert. And so as they continue to move on through the desert, Exodus 15, starting in verse 20 says, when Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went to the desert of Shur for 3 days. 3 days. They traveled in the desert without finding water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink the water because it was bitter. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what are we to drink? Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood, and he threw the wood in the water, and it became fit to drink. There the Lord issued a ruling and instruction for them, and put them to the test. This is what God said. If you listen carefully to the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all of his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. And so God says, if you listen to me, if you trust me, if you follow me, I'm going to take care of you. And so as they moved out of Marah, then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped here. God showed himself and didn't take care of them. And there we move into chapter 16, and it says, the whole Israelite community then set out from Elim and came into the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us here out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. So God told Moses, so Rachel and Sarah, I will rain down bread in the morning and quail in the evening. I will take care of my people. And he gives them instructions. They're to collect each day what they need for that day. Except on the day before the Sabbath. That day they're to collect 2 days because they need to honor the Sabbath and it's a day of rest, and so they're not to gather on the Sabbath. So you have God who proved himself saying, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to provide all you need. And some listen, some don't. Some try to collect for 2 days or more and they just keep taking it in. Because what if he doesn't prove? Well, what's extra gets all maggoty and smells really bad by him. So they have to throw away. And then some on Sabbath, they go out and they're just like, oh, what did you collect today? Where are we supposed to collect? The Sabbath, it was the rest to honor the day. They're not quite getting that God is going to provide. Some still want to store up just in case. But every day other than the Sabbath, God provided all the food that they needed as they moved through the desert. He did this every single day. That's why in Numbers, the passage that I read, it said, we don't have food, we don't have bread, we don't have water, and we ate this miserable food. They had food, they just didn't have the food that they wanted, right? And that's the same thing here. We sat around pots of meat in Egypt and ate everything we wanted. Chapter 17 says, the whole Israelite community then set out from the desert of Sin, and they traveled from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, and there was no water there for the people to drink. And so, guess what? They just sat down and left. And said, God, we got one. So they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. And Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? But the people were thirsty for water, and they grumbled against Moses. And they said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and our livestock die of thirst? And Moses cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? And he's exactly like, what? Why? Why me? He's probably thinking that burning bush is took the shop down a notch, right? But now he has to be frustrated. The people are coming to him instead of trusting God like they should. He's like, they're ready to stone me now. And so God gives him instructions. He says, go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will stand there before you at the rock of Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? Now I'm going to pause there. The next account is really fun. But I'm going to stop there because I want to make sure we don't miss what's going on. Because we have these 600,000 men, women, and children who just saw the hand of God move in remarkable ways. First, to get them out from under the rule and slavery of Pharaoh through the plague. And as they're leaving, there has to be that sigh of relief that they're never going to have to go back to making bricks that they're not going to use themselves. But then Pharaoh realizes what's happening, and he gets his men, and he goes after them, and then Israel, saying, weren't there enough grapes in Egypt for us? You just left us there. We're just going to die out here. But I had just seen God do it. But it didn't seem to think, oh, maybe we can do something like that. And then, of course, God does the big thing. And he divides the sea and puts that highway in the middle so that he can cross on dry land, and then the walls of water come down on top of Pharaoh and his army. Like, how amazing to see all of this, to experience all of this. And so they recognize his work and the miracle, and they sing and they praise God, and they say, we're going to trust him, we're going to follow him, we're going to listen to him. But within days, they're hungry. And they complain and whine. We're hungry, Moses, we're hungry. Did you bring us out here just to let us starve to death? And so again, God shows up and he brings down the manna and the quail, and they have plenty each and every day. And then they travel more, and there's no water. And again, we're thirsty, Moses. Did you just bring us out here to die of thirst? And when I read this, I totally jump in a time machine, go back and slap them a little bit. He's like, wake up, people! What have you just seen? What did you just walk through? Have you not seen all that God has done and is doing? And if he's already done it, will he not do it again? And I want to look at these accounts and just go, how silly are you? It just makes me angry. And then I look in here. And I get convicted because I think about all that God has done for me. The ways he's provided for me, the way he has protected me, the way he has proved himself to me. And I don't always follow him. I know I'm not step in line with each and everything that he has asked me to do each and every day, moment by moment. Those detours made me nervous. I'm so worried. I still be concerned about how situations are going to work out. I can still get overwhelmed with all that's going on. And so I'm just faithful. Because I get caught up in what I can't control, in my own needs, my own material needs. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need this, I need that. I have a feeling that some of you might be right there. But there are times that God is right there. He has done all these amazing things for each and every one of us. But there are times that we still get so concerned or so worried or just say, but why can't I do this? I need this. And really, I want this. He's taken care of you. He's taken care of you once or twice before. And without him. And he can and he will do it again and again and again. And so therefore, we don't have to do this. But sometimes I would rather, and maybe you would join me on this, one thing I want my God to meet. In the place where I'm comfortable, in the place where I don't have to trust, because it's there in front of me. They had what they wanted in Egypt. Instead of, they weren't happy with this bread from heaven stuff, they had this pot of meat in Egypt. So can't we just go wrong? But folks, we need to learn to give up the things of this earth. The wants we have for the things of this world that will always, always leave us hungry. That pot of meat runs out eventually. But God was providing that manna, that bread from heaven, every single day. They weren't missing meals. They just weren't getting what they wanted. They were supposed to be loving that heavenly bread, but they were ready to give that up for a pot of meat in the land of slavery. While we may want to think that those Israelites were pretty silly for not remembering what God had done for them, and saying that they were going to follow and trust God, and then thinking he's going to leave them there to die of hunger or thirst. Have we not done the same thing? Have you worried about something this week? Have you been concerned about something this week? Have you felt overwhelmed with something this week? Maybe you're sitting here right now, hardly focusing on the sermon because you're thinking of all the things you have to do this coming week, and you're wondering how they're going to work out, and you don't understand why this is happening or that is happening. Have you ever been concerned about how leaves are going to get met? Have you ever desired for something that you could have gotten before, but now that you're following Jesus, isn't as much of an option? For you who are on Facebook, and maybe you don't always go to the church page often, but I always try to do a Music Monday, and tomorrow I already know the song that's going to be there. I'm going to read the lyrics of it now. It's by Sarah Groves. It's called Painting Pictures of Egypt. And it speaks to this idea. She says, I don't want to leave here, but I don't want to stay. It feels like pinching to me either way. And the places I long for the most are the places where I've been. They're calling out to me like a long-lost friend. It's not about losing faith, and it's not about trust. It's all about comfortable when you move so much. And the place I wasn't perfect, but I found a way to live. And it wasn't milk or honey where they're going, but then neither is this. I've been painting pictures of Egypt and leaving out what it lacks. The future feels so hard, and I want to go back. But the places that used to fit me cannot hold the things I've learned, and the roads were closed off to me while my back was turned. The past is so tangible, I know it by heart. Familiar things are never easy to discard. I was dying for some freedom, but now I hesitate to go. I am caught between the promise and the things I know. I've been painting pictures of Egypt, leaving out what it lacks. The future feels so hard, and I want to go back. But the places that used to fit me cannot hold the things I've learned, and the roads were closed off to me while my back was turned. If it comes too quick, I may not appreciate it. Is that the reason behind all this time in sin? And then she sums up the Israelites' plight, but I think she very well sums up how we all live. Well, We think the past is better because it's known, because it's comfortable. Even if it wasn't really good. But those days before coming and saying yes to Jesus might have seemed better somehow. It seems better because we were controlling it ourselves. We decided what we wanted to do and what we didn't want to do, and how we spent our time and our money and how we did life. But now God is involved. We said yes to Jesus and the work of forgiveness and grace that He accomplished on the cross. But that also means that we have to surrender to Him and His ways. And surrender is scary and hard. And it's so, so good. Because we see Him lead us out of the slavery to sin and guide us through the sea. And we see Him provide for our needs, and we never have to worry. I mean, it sounds a silly question to say which sounds better, your old life or your new life, but surrender is hard. But Jesus has offered freedom to each of us. He has promised to meet our needs. And so we have to know how we will respond to these detours in our life. When we meet these challenges, do we get anxious and want to turn around and go back to where we were? Or will we go forward? How will you respond to these detours? Turn around where you know that you can be satisfied if you can take care of yourself. Or you gather what He provides each and every day and never have to worry about it. And walk in the freedom that He has given us from slavery, sin. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank You so much for all that You've done. And Lord, would You help us to remember all that You've done. We want to look at the Israelites and think that they're nothing, that we're nothing like them, but Lord, we are. We watch You do amazing things, and then we forget so quickly when life throws a challenge, gives us a detour in one direction. Lord, would You work in each one of our hearts and our lives to help us make a claim today that we will continue to walk in Your way. No matter the cost. Knowing that You do it. That You provide all things. Lord, use us as these to walk confidently with You so that others can see You in us as they face challenges, that we may be able to take their hands and take them up towards You. Continue to do Your work in and through our lives.